first on film and entertainment. And, well, Gregory King, hello to you. And I've got a non-film question to start things off with. A gather round of football, which has never occurred before in the AFL, being held in a home of football, no doubt about it, Adelaide. The word gather round, as in gather around or gathering in one city, can't they have... I mean, surely there's a better name for it. Is there not?
Well, it probably is, but the idea is that they're all playing in the one state, they're all gathering around the one area. But so far it's been quite exciting to watch some of these games, but I don't know whether the AFL will continue, given their history of stuffing up all these great experiments.
Well, I think it's been an incredible success so far. Obviously, in terms of the crowds, when I read the other day that 8 of the 9 matches had sold out. Obviously, we're talking about stadiums that are not going to seat 100,000 people, but that's not the point. Obviously, they're also making a lot of money out of this because and you and I have spoken about this before, price gouging. Do you know that it's costing up to $1,200 return to go from Melbourne to Adelaide? $1,200. That's with Qantas. And they were saying the other day $900 with the cheaper airline Jetstar, right? And then accommodation, $500 a night upwards. So
that surprises the opportunities they announced to gather around, though. It's not normally that expensive to go to Adelaide.
No, but I mean, surely this whole idea, and, you know, I'm not having a go at Qantas because I like Qantas and I flew Qantas the other week, but, you know, in the endeavour to try and get back the money that it lost during COVID, and this is a question for all of you. I mean, Jackie, you're about to go overseas. So, I mean, did you find the pricing worse than it was prior to COVID? Jackie?
Oh, well, I've never flown to the place that I'm going to before COVID, so I wouldn't have any idea. But I don't know why. I don't know why you think it would be any different for airlines and hotels than it is for Uber and taxis and anything like that. Prices go up and down, and I really think in our society we've got to accept that. That's what happens.
Well, I understand. I mean, the predictions, if you like, that Qantas had in terms of making money back and so forth, they've exceeded those because part of that's to do with the pricing, and that I just think it's got to be reasoned and reasonable. And at times,
it's probably excessive. Fair enough.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, Peter, do you? I've never asked you this. Do you, Peter Krause? I'm talking to now. Peter, are you somebody who travels much or not really? Because you go to Germany quite a bit.
I used to when I was a part of the Munich Film Festival and etc. But and Berlin. But it's now over $5,000 to now fly to Berlin and back, and it's just ridiculous. It's just impossible to do.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm getting at. It's the average punter. You know, it's fair enough to save up for a holiday, but if you're going to ostracize people and it's only for the wealthy, it's fascinating as well. I don't know whether you read this, Jackie Hamilton, but there was a story about the fact that the people who are buying first-class seats used to be the more seasoned, shall we say, and those with money. It's changed. It's changed dramatically, so much so that younger people are buying first-class seats as an experience that they claim because they can't afford to buy a house. Now, wow. That is a quantum shift.
Are these the ones who were doing the smashed Davo?
Probably, but I think it.
There's an element there where I know this has been said for some years that they reached a point where when the house prices went, shall we say, as they say, through the roof, there was an element of a thing where they had given up, and so they thought they might as well stay. But I don't know if that translated quite to first class overseas. I mean, that's very expensive.
Well, it's certainly a far cry from having smashed Avo to doing first class and going to Europe. Having said all of that, that's an interesting introduction to First on Film and Entertainment. Peter, you and I the night before, we went along to the opening of the fantastic film festival. Look, you've been to this before. I can't say that I have. There are a series of outrageous films, 20-something in the program, correct?
Correct.
And the more ridiculous. There was one short that was shown. I don't know whether it was a Japanese, and we're talking about not only heads being lopped off, but nakedness and heads being lopped off at the same time. And the short that we saw about gnomes will never let you see sausages the same way, correct?
Correct. I think it's a Dutch-Belgian co-production, and it's incredibly well filmed, but it is pretty nasty.
Yeah, you're talking about gnomes, the 6-minuter. We don't get to see a lot of shorts. But what about that Japanese sort of makeup, dress up, nakedness, and
Lion Girl,
which I think is ending the festival, and it's on at the Lido Cinema, by the way. I was quite impressed by. I presume he's the director of this particular fantastic film festival. He is extremely eloquent, and just sort of things were rolling off his tongue at the rate of knots about virtually every outrageous movie that he could lay his hands on.
Exactly, Hudson Sawada, absolutely. He programs it really well because it is meant to be an out there film festival showing the extremes of behaviour and of language and of sex and so on. So and he has a built-in audience for these outlandish films who want to see films that are really challenging.
Well, there was that reaction, of course, to his speech last night, which only went for about 5 minutes, but everybody was hooping and hollering and carrying on, which was terrific. You know, it was a good, fun atmosphere at the Lido. So I'm pleased that there is a cinema for it. The only thing is, boy, oh boy, parking around that place, it's Hawthorne, isn't it?
Yes.
Very, very difficult. So just be mindful of that. Give yourselves a few more minutes if you are going to go along to the Fantastic Film Festival. And we will talk about the movie that we saw when it officially opens in general release. But I should say that Polite Society is going to be a real winner. I have no doubt about that. Do you agree?
Absolutely agree. It's very funny and very clever and a nice cultural-based, female-based film.
Talking about the outrageous, we've got to start with Mafia Mama. This is a MA-rated 101-minute film, deliberately over-the-top mafia spoof, and you can either view it as errant nonsense or as stupid fun, right? So after starting in one camp, I've got to say I ended up going with the flow and opting for the latter. You've got Toni Collette as the star. She plays Kristen, 40-year-old married American mother who's just packed off her beloved son to college, right? Teenage son. She herself is in a job where she's always walked over, and her husband is about to be caught out. Then out of the blue, she receives a phone call from a woman in Italy named Bianca, played by Monica Bellucci, who is a very fine and seasoned actor. This phone call basically tells Kristen that she has to come to Rome and attend her grandfather's funeral. He, her father's father, is a man she has not seen since she was a child growing up in the Italian capital. After that, her mum took her to be brought up in the United States. At first, Kristen dismisses the notion of returning to Italy, dismisses it out of hand, but circumstances see her change her mind. Once she gets there, Kristen discovers to her horror that her grandfather was in fact the powerful head of a mafia clan. His dying wish? For her to take over the family business. Of course, Kristen objects wildly, but she's given no choice. Now, what's also worth mentioning is that her family's clan is in the middle of a bloody war with a rival mob. And with things going awry in the United States, Kristen is after some hot and heavy romance. Now, I did say at the beginning, if all this sounds stupid, that is because it really is very stupid, and it's also ultra-violent. Violent rather than violet. Although, like the rest of the movie, those graphic scenes are played for laughs. For those that for those that are prepared to swallow that, because there'll be some people who are going to say this is too violent. The whole thing's carefully stage managed to take the mickey out of the genre, and you've got Kristen as this deliberately, desperately floundering fish out of water who gets her sea legs during the course of the film. The screenplay by J. Michael Feldman and Debbie Yoon, from an original story by Amanda, I'm not sure how you pronounce the surname, Sters, Stethers, something like that. The director orchestrating this baloney is Catherine Hardwicke, who was responsible for the Twilight series. So everything about Mafia Mama pushes the envelope. It's about how to package excess and bring with it laughs. Jackie, did you get any laughs out of Mafia Mama, or have you not yet seen it?
I did go along on Friday afternoon, actually, and saw Mafia Mama. And yes, I had some laughs, not a lot, but enough laughs to also enjoy the fact that the public screening I went to, the audience got a real kick out of it.
Oh, did
It
you?
is escapist fun. Yeah, people were laughing out loud.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's good.
It is escapist fun. It is silly, yes. And as you say, it does start off. I mean, my thoughts were exactly yours as a fish out of water story. But I really felt it became a story. Well, it wasn't. I felt it very clearly became a story of empowerment of a woman, of going from crushingly horrible situations with men, apart from her son, who it was her husband and her colleagues were obviously exaggerated characters, but really rather ghastly, to her becoming empowered in a way of being, just your average killing machine, really. And as her son described her, as a real badass. So, that goes with the humour. That was a little bit crude where it didn't need to be in some of the humour. But I didn't mind the story. I mean, there was plenty always going on. Loved the Italian countryside, the beautiful scenery, the architecture, the inside of those magnificent mafia, homes, of course, where we don't know where that money came from, but the interiors and the setup was absolutely beautiful to watch visually. Just take care with a bit of the violence. I thought it was probably more. It was more graphic than funny with the stiletto. That went just a bit too far, and the language was unnecessarily crude. But yes, a good fun film.
Well, really, incompetent lackeys and bumbling assassins—they're the name of the game, aren't they, Greg King?
If you say so, Alex.
You clearly have the same predilection. Go for it.
This is a fairly generic action comedy, and it's a variation, as Jackie said, on that usual fish out of water scenario, and it incorporates many of the tropes from gangster films and rom-coms. But I thought it was something of a mess, and it doesn't really work. The script was a bit lazy, tapped into many of the familiar tropes of the mob movie, including several obvious nods to the Oscar-winning classic The Godfather. But I thought it was tonally uneven, and the elements of screwball comedy sit uncomfortably with some jarring moments of Tarantino-esque violence, including that scene Jackie referenced there, where Colette kills a hitman by repeatedly striking him in the face and the groin with a stiletto heel. And this scene prompted a couple of walkouts at the session I attended there. And there is some bloody violence here as well. I like the cinematography of the Italian countryside. You can't go wrong with that. And there's lots of food and drink to whet your appetite as well. I was almost tempted to give it an extra half star for that, but I didn't in the end.
Well, that's interview is surely if you've got nice food and drink and a beautiful Italian countryside, that elevates a movie. But I mean, you got to say,
normally it does, but this one, just something wrong with it. Toni Collette is normally a good dramatic actress. She doesn't do much in the way of comedy, and I thought her performance early in the film was a bit shrill, but she did make the most of her transition from bored, frumpy housewife to beautiful, confident mob boss. I like the two bodyguards, Aldo and Dante. I thought they brought nice touches of humour to the material. And Sophie Nomvetti got some big laughs for her role as Jenny, Kristen's sassy lawyer friend, who advises to make the most of her eat, pray and fornicate trip to Rome there. But I thought some of the peripheral characters were cliches and characters there. The film looks good, but ultimately this is something of a mess and a disappointment, and it makes Jim Abraham's awful 1989 comedy Mafia look like an Oscar winner by comparison.
Well, I mean, look, I agree that Sophia Nomvetti, as this sort of legal Jenny, I thought puts in a really strong showing. I thought she was a really good role. But look, you talked about Toni Collette. Well, I mean, she doesn't try to make Mozart out of mincemeat, does she, Peter?
Possibly not. I tend to agree with just about everything Greg has said. It's a film that I call a straight-to-video cinema release. It is a mess, unfortunately, and I was looking forward to...
I'm just not clear. What do you think is a mess about the film?
I'm just getting to that. I think it's a film that falls between two stools. It doesn't know whether it wants to be a parody, and there is that empowerment aspect, although the character development is too fast and unbelievable, or whether it's meant to be a gore fest, which reflects the Godfather type movies. It's a very uneasy sort of mix, and I think that's the problem with this film. I mean, Toni Collette does her best. She sort of smirks and smiles and frowns her way through the film, but she's not given much to work with. And Monica Bellucci is so wasted in this film as having a sort of a support role without much to do. I still remember a couple of years ago, apart from Greg, you mentioned that 1989 film. I agree, that was quite a good parody at the time. I remember Isabelle Huppert being in a French film a few years ago, playing a mafia mama. And she actually did it so well because it was a comedy, it was a parody, and it didn't have to have all of that gore. Now,
what was that called, Peter? Because I remember that. What was it called?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that too. It just came into my mind, but I'd have to look it up. But yeah, that was a very enjoyable film. But in this case, I don't know why they had to resort to the overt violence, unless that was the intention from the beginning. Catherine Hardwicke directed this, and she and Elizabeth Banks with Cocaine Bear, there's obviously some female filmmakers who feel the need to work in the male territory of overt violence and gore and so on, and I don't think it is effective. I think it sacrifices a good story to do that.
I mean, when you say the male domain, I mean traditionally the male domain, but I think that you've got to sort of look at things under a different microscope these days and in a different lens, that it's not going to be about men or women. It's going to be about a particular genre or a style of movie making. And why can't men, women and gender neutral make movies about whatever they want to do? I mean, they can.
No, of course they can. I've no problem with that. But it just seems to be it's sort of selling out the script and selling out whatever the script is. In this case, in Mafia Mama, it's not a terribly good script to begin with. So I was quite disappointed by it. I was expecting either something much cleverer or much better as a parody, or, all right, if you're going to go for the full gore violence, then you do that. But this film doesn't know what direction it wants to take.
Well, I mean, my take on all of this is to lower your expectations. The best way to enjoy Mafia Mama is to let it it's slapstick. It's slapstick action, crime, comedy. Just let it wash over you. That's the way to sort of get the most out of it. But I understand the commentary about the violence, because I think all of us have said the same thing. It really does push the envelope, and you know, that stiletto scene you can't unsee, and it is, it's gross. That's the only way of putting it. I don't doubt that was the intent of Catherine Hardwicke, but it's also about reading the mood of the meeting and about whether audiences are going to accept it, I suppose. So let's get some scores. I think Jackie and I will probably be a bit higher than the rest of you. So let's lower the bar and start with you, Greg.
4 out of 10. As I said, I was almost tempted to give it an extra half star for the beautiful scenery and the wine and that, but in the end, I just said, nah, can't do it.
Okay, Peter Krause.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Greg, and the scenery is not an issue. It's about story. So 4 out of 10 from me.
Okay, so Jackie, it'll be interesting to see whether you and I are aligned. I'm prepared to give this a 6 out of 10, and you?
Alex, I'm coming in just under that at 5.5, because I'm not, by all my praise that I did give the film, I wasn't saying that it was a great film by any means, and I can see so many faults. But I think there is probably an issue with who the audience is for it, because you wouldn't necessarily get a younger audience who can go with that kind of gore fest and foul language going to see a Toni Collette film. She, the audience that was in the screening I went to was an older audience Fortunately, as I said, they did laugh. But we keep referencing that stiletto scene, which I think was over the top for the audience that this film was going to be aimed at. So 5.5 out of 10 from me for an easygoing audience.
There we go. We are on JAir 88 FM. Please keep listening 24/7, programming to stimulate the mind. That's what it's all about. We go from one star Australian actor to another. The Pope's Exorcist, which is also MA rated and 103 minutes. And it's been inspired by the files of the Vatican's chief exorcist. I was not sold on what I was delivered. In fact, much of it, again, appeared errant nonsense to me. We're talking 1987. The contention is that the new guard at the Vatican sees no need and no future for Father Gabriel Amorth, played by Russell Crowe. Amorth, of course, thinks otherwise, and he's answerable to the Pope himself, played by Franco Nero in this film. And the Pope is also old school. Now, exorcisms, well, they're few and far between, according to what is said in this movie. Amorth uses psychology when necessary to help clear the minds of some who believe that they are possessed. Then the Pope calls on him to investigate arguably the most challenging case of his, Father Gabriel Amorth's, career, concerning a young boy called Henry, played by, I'll try my best to get this pronunciation semi-correct, Peter D'Souza Fahony. Anyway, Henry is inhabited by the devil at an old abbey in Spain. And he's just moved there from the United States with his mother Julia, played by Alex Esso, and his older sister Amy, Laurel Marsden, after the death of his father a year earlier. So basically, Henry and Amy's dad died a year ago. Julia's the mother, inhabited the abbey from her husband, and with no means of support, she was left with no choice other than to relocate, much to the annoyance of the teenager Amy. She's sort of this recalcitrant character in the film. The building itself, the abbey, is in desperate need of repairs, and construction specialists are there on hand when they arrive. Also, at that point is a local priest, Father Escobel, played by Daniel Zavato. Henry hasn't spoken, this is the young kid, hasn't spoken since his father passed away in a car accident. Suddenly, he's talking in deep and menacing voice, with threats aplenty, including liberal use of profanities. So Father Amorth arrives, teams up with Father Escobel to try to purge the evil in their midst. And what they find is that the danger is far more severe than Father Amorth had imagined, and it goes to the very essence of the church. It's based on the books An Exorcist Tells His Story and An Exorcist, More Stories by Father Amorth. Script was written by Michael Petroni, who was responsible for The Book Thief, and Evan Spilotopoulos, The Unholy. Now, I've got to say, no subtlety or originality in this screenplay. I found it terribly cliched. I really did. And the director, Julius Avery, who did Samaritan, seemingly, and this is the quote that you used for your last movie, Greg, every trope in the horror genre to capture our attention. We're talking loud, creepy sounds, thunder, lightning, bodies slammed against walls, blood, ongoing fear, and more. And this troubled me. Russell Crowe, who I think is a very fine actor, they've asked him to bring an element of humour to his characterisation, which he does. It doesn't work in the context of what the Vatican's chief exorcist is presented with. It serves to undermine his authority. So
they've certainly taken a lot of liberties with the character, I think. Look, it's been 50 years since the Exorcist hit our screens and scared the big Jesus out of us, and there have been a lot of imitations along the way, and this film just ticks off all the usual cliches, many of which you've pointed to there, Alex. And there's nothing original about this film. I thought Russell Crowe brought a touch of gravitas to it, and he realises he's in preposterous material, but he's going along with it here. And director Julius Avery gave us a superior Overlord, which was a dark mix of World War II action and horror. set against the backdrop of the DJ invasion. That was a much better film. Here he effectively ramps up the cliches, injects a couple of jump scares into the proceedings, and I thought the cinematography from Carlin Mochadshep, shot in a dark palette, worked and enriched the sinister undertones of the film. And I thought there was great production design from Alan Gilmore about the interior of the house and everything, and some of the special effects were quite well done. And Jed Kurzweil's score I thought was suitably ominous there. But yeah, it's just another a long line of cliched horror movies about demonic possession there. Said it all before. Nothing new here. Move on.
Well, I mean, you look at the character of Daniel Zavato, just goes through the motion, playing second fiddle to Crow. There wasn't anything particularly special about that. And I mean, the SO is cast in a rather impotent role where most of the time she's just called upon to play scared. I mean, there was more there that could have been brought out. Marsden goes from being uppity to compliant after Henry's meltdown. And as for D'Souza Mahoney, most of the time he just has to lie in bed and allow a sinister voice to take over his real voice. Now, it just didn't work for me, Peter. What about you?
I tend to agree. It didn't work for me either. I mean, who can forget the 1973 original Exorcist film, which was such a fantastic head-turning experience. But with the Pope's Exorcist, I think they tried to portray the real-life Father Amort, but what they've done is they've fictionalized the stories of his actual supposed exorcisms, if you believe in that or not, into this rather ridiculous story of multiple demons. And what I found incredible is that halfway through the film, when they reveal, and that it's not a major revelation, but they reveal the history of of Christianity and the Inquisition, and of the comments that are made that, well, of course, the Christians really were not guilty for the Inquisition. They were inhabited by demons. So that really explains it. They were really innocent. Yeah, okay. Look, obviously the director has thrown everything possible at the audience. The last 15 minutes of the film is just a fest of gore and of violence and of people throwing themselves around the room and so on. It's just, it is one cliche after another. And it for me, the New Zealand actor Russell Crowe does that.
Hang on. How long has he lived in Australia for?
I thought his nationality was New Zealand.
I'm not sure. Anyway, maybe both sides of the divide, shall we say?
It sounds like you disowned him.
Yeah, is it just because of this movie, Peter, or if it?
No.
No, fair enough. A lot of fun. Go for it.
I'm joking, but I have to say the other sequences that amused me greatly was that I read that Russell Crowe wanted to ride around Rome in a Vespa, even though that was not what Father Amort did. He wanted to do that, and when we see scenes of him riding around in the Vespa, I thought, hey, it's the Flying Nun revisited. It's fantastic.
Traveling all the way from Italy to Spain on that little Vespa is a bit of a journey, isn't it?
It certainly is. That's true. That's right. Yes, I hope he had frequent flyer points. But anyway, look, this film is again a bit of a mess. Again, it's a video release that's gone straight to cinema. A disappointment. And if you want to see a good Exorcist film, go back to the original 1973 one.
Yes.
I thought Russell Crowe here looked like latter-day Raymond Burr with his girth and that beard and the fedora he wore. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's nothing terribly surprising about the Pope's Exorcist. It tries too hard to scare before it reaches what I thought was an inevitable conclusion. I also found it very disappointing. What about you, Jackie?
Well, I've got a different take on this from you guys because I avoid horror, scary films always, probably ever since The Exorcist came out. And so to me, it doesn't go along the familiar tropes and the cliches because I haven't seen all these cliches over the years of these films that I've avoided. So I actually found it quite fun. And I've got to say, I thought the New Zealander Russell Crowe stood out as it really was his film. I liked his little bit of a wink to the in there. He was a bit of a fun guy. I thought his Italian language and accent were really good. I thought that was fabulous. That convinced me. Put it like that. Again, I love the in Spain. I love the ruined abbey, the house that needed repair. That was a great setting for it. You could tell it was going to happen. The women in the cast weren't particularly convincing and had rather meagre roles. But the little boy was. I mean, I didn't find it super scary. Even though I could see all the sounds and music carrying on, trying to bring about the darkness and the light and it was a bit more with things like the continuity. I thought was pretty ordinary, whether the blood was in the beard or then suddenly in the next scene not in the beard, as if he'd rushed off to the bathroom in between. But overall, the production values were fabulous and it looked really good, and I sort of enjoyed this film.
Very good. All right. Well, I mean, does that mean you're going to go along to horror more often?
No.
So you went along to this because it had Russell Crowe in it?
I did. I want to keep up with the body of work of great New Zealand actors. But again, I guess I found it sinister, as Greg said, rather than scary. I mean, not particularly scary, but definitely I like the sinister streak through it.
All right, well, let's again go tallest to shortest or shortest to tallest. I think I'll be the low point on this one. I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. Greg?
Well, 5 to 5.5.
Peter?
I certainly agree with you, Alex. I'll give it 4 out of 10. And by the way, Jackie, that Isabelle Huppert mafia film was Mama Weed.
Mama Weed, okay. And Jackie, what are you going to give the Pope's Exorcist?
Yes. The Pope's Exorcist, I give it 6.5 out of 10.
Okay, there we go. So
I'm still trying to exercise it from my brain. Yeah.
Very,
Thank you.
for those people who are short of dad jokes, just tune in to First on Film and Entertainment. And Greg is here for your entertainment. This is wonderful. Okay, we are moving on, folks, to a movie which is also silly. I mean, there's a lot of those today. The Innocent. Now, this won the best screenplay at the César Awards, the French equivalent to the Oscars. It is outrageous. It's a comedic crime romance, M-rated, 99 minutes. And you've got a character called Sylvie Lefranc, played by Anouk Grinberg, 60-year-old prison drama teacher. So there we go. That cannot help herself. I mean, I say that because she's got a habit of falling head over heels in love with and then marrying the inmates that she's teaching drama to. And inevitably that ends badly. Much to her son Abel, Louis Garrel's chagrin, that's hard to say, Louis Garrel's chagrin, much to Abel's chagrin, Sylvie, the mother, is up to her old tricks again, this time with smooth-talking thief Michel Ferrard, played by Rojdi Zem. Understandably, the recently widowed Abel, the Louis Garrel character, is deeply suspicious, but no amount of protestation from him will prevent Sylvie from marrying Michel in jail. Abel, well, he opens up to his best friend, Clemence Genevieve, played by Naomi Melland, who is also, well, she was also the best mate of Abel's wife. And we don't really get to know, I can't recollect exactly when his wife died, but it was recently. That's all I can say. Abel and Clemence work together in an aquarium, and Abel will do whatever it takes to protect his mother. In turn, his mum surprises Abel when she decides to abandon drama teaching in prison to open a florist shop, as you would, of course. It's there that Abel discovers incriminating evidence suggesting that upon his release, Michel has not abandoned his old ways. A bungling stakeout follows, and its narrative takes off in a somewhat surprising and totally kooky direction. The movie, The Innocent, has been co-written and is directed by Louis Garrel. It's a film that I would describe as pleasurable to watch to a point. Premise, yeah, it's not a bad one, but it doesn't quite fit together the way it could have. I thought it actually lost a beat in the run home. In its attempts to be clever and catch us, the audience, out, I reckon it zagged too often. It tried too hard at the end. But the pick of the performers undoubtedly is Naomi Merlant rather. She won the César for Best Supporting Actress in this particular role. I understand why. Really joyous disposition that she brings to Clemence, and unmistakable chemistry between Garel and Merlant. The relationship between Abel and Clemence forms one of the central components of the plot. And his restraint, deliberate restraint, as Abel, is a sharp contrast to her joie de vivre that she has an abundance of. Clearly the pair is drawn to one another. So, I mean, then you've got the Anouk Grinberg character, deliberately over the top as the woman who loves to love. And finally, Roshdi Zem, quite charming, but also very calculating as Michelle. And it's another one of these movies, The Innocent, that I reckon just let it wash over you. Bit of funny nonsense. I mean, underpinning it all, I suppose you can say it's what it takes to make a relationship work. So, if you want to go into a little bit more depth, but this movie doesn't have a lot of that, I've got to say. It's really, it's out to tickle the funny bone, and it does that to a point. Peter, how far does it really go in achieving that, in your opinion?
Yeah, not as far as I would have liked. It was sold as a comedy, and yet it's really a dramedy, because it deals with a number of issues, and there's a setup that I thought was very clever later in the film, which I thought was well done. But I agree with you, Alex. It tends to overstay its welcome a bit. It's interesting how Louis Garrel is a well-known actor and now filmmaker, and he always casts himself as this sort of naive sort of character who has to learn that things may not be as well as they could be. Look, overall, it's an enjoyable film. It's well made. It's fairly tightly done. But I also agree with you that the payoff is possibly not as strong as it could have been. So, but overall, it's a reasonably good French film.
I wonder, Peter, because I mean, how old would he be? Getting close to 40 or something? I don't.
Yes.
So I mean, whether something that he could get away with maybe 10 years ago, simply partly because of his age, he couldn't, because he's painted as this supposedly intelligent fellow. I mean, he's a zoologist, right? I mean, that's what his career is. So that doesn't sort of quite match the characterization. That troubled me a little bit. I don't know whether it troubled you.
Yeah, but I agree with you, actually. That naivety, being a professional, doesn't quite hang together very well.
No. What about you, Jackie? Did you like The Innocent?
I'm looking forward to seeing it this week.
Ah, very good. And what about you, Gregory?
I agree. It wasn't quite as funny or as Fast and Furious as the sort of advertising made it out seem to be. I thought it was a bit clunky for a lot of the time there. I thought it only came alive in the last 40 minutes or so. But I agree, there is some good chemistry between Louis Garrel and Naomi Merlant in their roles there. But yeah, and look, for me, it didn't quite work as it should have there. So it's a bare pass for me.
Really? Okay. Well, it's interesting. I'm going to give it better than a bare pass. I think it still had its moments, but unfortunately, and this is where you often judge things harshly, films set up contentions reasonably sometimes, but then when the payoff isn't there, you feel shortchanged. And I think that's what you and I were talking about, Peter, that this is certainly the case here. And I actually saw this while I was in Sydney. Now, the other interesting part about this is my wife came along and she also sort of thought ho-hum. So, it's disappointing in as much as, well, what does this say about the César Awards, that this won the best screenplay? I'm not sure what other French movies have got yet. But, I think that's part of the problem here. The screenplay didn't quite hang together the way it should have. But that's just my opinion. So what are we going to give it out of 10? We'll start with you, Greg.
5 out of 10.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, it was up against Night of the 12th and some other films, which I thought were better scripts. But anyway, I'll give it 6 out of 10 because I do admire the director, Louis Garrel. He does a reasonable job with it.
Yeah, and I think it's a 6.5 out of 10. So yeah, I mean it's not a world beater. It's not a terrible film either, but it's sort of it verges on average or maybe slightly above, but no better than that. That is The Innocent. So we reach a point in First on Film and Entertainment where we talk about another movie, which now this is a strange one, and I haven't done this a lot, but I didn't last this one, and maybe I need to go back and see it again. And I mean, it's been raved about in some circles, and I'm talking about EO, a movie about a donkey. Now, okay, so let's go to the director. He's an 84-year-old. His name is Jerzy Skolimowski. This is his first film in 7 years. It's 87 minutes. It's MA rated. And this is the Cannes Jury Prize winner, EO. Third film he's written in collaboration with his wife, Ewa Piskowska. And the film is loosely inspired by a seminal 1966 movie. I'm not sure whether you saw this one, Peter, or Hazard Balthazar.
Yes, the Robert Bresson film, which is a terrific film. Yep.
Now, it's interesting reading into this a little bit that Skolimowski said he hasn't been moved to tears in any movie other than our Hazard Balthazar. And that's obviously the film that inspired this one. And it follows the travails of a grey Sardinian donkey by the name of EO, and follows the exploits across the Polish and Italian countryside. A lot of dream sequences. During his travels, the donkey's helped and hindered by the people that he meets. And the film starts off in a circus-type setting, and I'm not sure whether that person, the person that rides him or whatever in the circus has got a real love affair with the donkey, absolutely adores him. But the donkey's taken away because animals and circuses don't mix. That's basically the contention. And you've got various people along the way. This is told from a donkey's perspective, and it actually utilizes a what's called donkey vision. So it's visually quite distinctive. Not many words are spoken. And I mean, amongst the people that the donkey meets, there's a young Italian priest, a countess, a rowdy Polish soccer team that adopts the donkey as their mascot. And it invites the audience to see the world through the eyes of its four-legged protagonist. Now, I get all of that, but I just found it hard going, and I didn't last the distance. And maybe I'll have to go back, but it just didn't do it for me. Jackie, what about you?
Oh, so yeah, same, Alex. I wanted to love this film. I had heard so much about it. And in the film, as he is pronounced, Eo, I really loved the idea of seeing the world, and particularly the follies and the variety in the way humans live their lives through the eyes of a donkey, with the emphasis on eyes, because they're really beautifully shot and very soulful. And I really wanted to experience what I read that I thought would be in this film. And instead it was just really a bit of a load of claptrap, really, with some very discordant and annoying noise, really, sounds rather than music, and red filters. I didn't really understand what that was all about. And particular chapters of this journey that the donkey was on, some were weird, like, seeing him kind of thinking back to his time with the girl in a romantic kind of way. That was a bit odd. And there was a very random chapter with Isabel Huppert in that made no sense at all. I didn't know what that was doing there, and the donkey wasn't in it. And overall, it was just rather random and confusing.
What about you, Greg? Did you get more out of EO?
No, I didn't particularly like this film. I thought visually and thematically it was a fairly ugly film there. It's the script from Skolimowski seems to be made up of a lot of vignettes that are unresolved as the film moves from one incident to the next. There were some interesting cinematography, as you said, there, especially giving us a view of humanity, the best and worst of humanity from the donkey's perspective there. There's some interesting cinematography of the landscapes of Poland and Italy there. But there are some scenes, as Jackie said, that are bathed in a vivid red. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's symbolic of blood or something. There's even an evocative sequence there as EO approaches a windmill. That's probably an allusion to Don Quixote and the futility of his quest here. The film's largely dialogue-free there. And yeah, as Jackie said, heaps of critics have fallen over themselves to lavish praise on the film, but I'm not sure why. It's not a film that's going to have broad appeal for mainstream audiences. There have been much better films about animals on a long journey that are much more enjoyable and make much more sense than this one. And I'm with Jackie. I'm not sure what that sequence with Isabelle Huppert was doing there. That made no sense at all.
Well, I suppose, Peter, you're going to put a voice of reason to all of this, aren't you? You're going to tell this is a world beater that deserves all the praise that it's received, correct?
Correct. This is a...
Hey, where did I pick this from? I can always rely upon you to come through. Well done, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay,
Donkey.
So let me start you at this point. Isabelle Huppert, can you explain that scene, please?
She is a landowner that has donkeys and other animals, mainly horses, on her estate, and so the film does look at a little bit of her story with her son, I think it is, and it's just an interesting aspect to the different stories that are put together in this film. Look, this is I think it's a superb film because it is a great observation of how an animal, and in subtext how we view what is happening in contemporary Europe, the good and the bad aspects of life that are part of the, I suppose, what's happening right now, and the way the donkey is treated. It is about a life journey, and there are some hints about the donkey's life journey. It's interesting to note that the red filter and all that is some of the hints. That they used one main donkey and 5 stunt donkeys for some of the other.
Right, so that's a profession now, a stunt donkey. Good.
That's right.
That's magnificent. In other words, they breed stunt donkeys. This is your task for the week, Peter.
Are they from New Zealand, Peter?
I'll ask Russell, but I think they stolen
Mr. Crow to you. Sorry.
Oh, I think they're
making a bit of an ass of ourselves, dear.
Oh, stop it!
Come on, are we talking about Igor?
Eeyore, but I think they stole a few donkeys from the Banshees of Inisherin, but that's another story. Anyway, look, EO is Oscar nominated for Best International Film, and I can see why it was nominated. It is a quite unusual, revelatory journey of this donkey's experiences, and beautifully shot. I really like the music. I think the use of discordant as well as harmonious music is very cleverly done. I think there's a lot to admire about this film. I really enjoyed it.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, because I didn't last the distance, I'm not going to score this one. I don't think it's fair. But I will ask the rest of you who presumably sat through the 87 minutes. And it's funny, I got a text from somebody last night who sees a lot of movies as well, and they also struggled enormously with it. Right? So it's going to be it's a very small audience movie, is what I'd be saying, Peter. Would you not?
Well, yes, but niche films are fine.
No, that doesn't make it a bad film in any way, shape, or form. No. But it's going to be a very selective film. So, look, let's start with you, Greg. Score out of 10?
Look, I thought the donkey had expressive eyes that seemed to give insight into his observations there.
Sorry,
I resisted the urge to give the donkey a voice, but I'm going to give this one 4. I didn't enjoy the experience at all.
Sorry, when you say this donkey had expressive eyes, how many donkeys on film have you seen that don't have expressive eyes?
There's Banshees of Inisherin, a lot of Winnie the Pooh and Eeyore.
And this donkey stood out to you, clearly.
At least, yeah. Anyway, as I said, 4 out of 10. I didn't enjoy the experience at all.
Okay. Jacqueline.
Look, I really, maybe my score's low because I really hoped and expected to get a wonderful experience from this film, and I was hugely disappointed. I'm sorry, I can't, and I found it aggressive too. Maybe what Peter says, all these things about what's going on in Europe. Sorry, for me it was about a donkey, so... I gave it 3 out of 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I'm so glad it only went for 88 minutes because
No,
If
don't.
it hadn't been any longer, I might not have lasted any further.
Please don't push it. It was 87.
Sorry, IMDb 88.
Yeah.
But never mind. I was there, you weren't.
Yes, yes, that's very, very true. No, I look at the Australian film. Funnily enough, I'm not sure why this is, but there is a discrepancy often between the Australian classification and the length of the film and the IMDb. Can any of you explain why? Peter, do you have any?
It might be how long it takes to close the curtains at the end. That might be the extra minute.
Okay, we've now got on from the sublime to the ridiculous. Very good indeed. Now, Peter, you're going to rescue this movie and you're going to give it a score in the 8 and above territory, aren't you?
I certainly am. I think it's a sublime film. It was Oscar nominated for a good reason, and a lot of Oscar voters saw how good a film it was, and I agree with them. 8 out of 10 from me.
Wow. So so collectively, there's been 3 people giving their views, and you've given it a 15 out of 30. So there we go. So you either believe in every word that Peter speaks, or you go the other direction. Now we're fast running out of time, so we won't have a lot of time today. I think we'll just hold this over. There's another movie I wanted to discuss, which is a really important film called The Innocent. And
We've talked about The Innocent.
No,
But you mean Broker.
I mean Broker.
Yeah.
I was thinking of one word or 2 words. I mean Broker. Now, it is a very... I thought it was a really well put together movie. So, we won't spend a lot of time now because time will be against it. But we'll talk in detail about it next week. What I will say is a bit of a tease is the contention is as follows, and apparently this happens. There's a baby box in a church in South Korea. This is a place where women can leave newborns to be picked up and cared for by those who care about the future of this young innocent that's left behind. Now, I'm not familiar. I mean, are any of you familiar with this as a practice? Because clearly the director, when I was reading about the director, he said, look, yeah, this is a thing. And South Korea is not the only place it takes place. Are any of you aware of this or have been? No?
I wasn't, but I did know that the Japanese director of the film, who also directed Shoplifters, also had some cases in Japan where that did happen, where newborn babies were left.
Yeah, I read that as well. I mean, pardon me, I'm about to choke, so I'm just taking a drink of water. Yeah. It's not nice when that happens. Pardon me. So, yeah, I mean, I think the director's a very fine exponent of the craft. I mean, really very accomplished. This is a very mature piece of work. And what surprised me about it was that it really is a drip feed film, and you learn more as it goes along. And I just thought the pacing of it was perfect. I didn't know what to expect when I was going in, but I came out of it thinking, well, this really makes you think. And so it's achieved exactly what the writer and director wanted to achieve. Koreeda Hirokazu is his name. We'll talk more about it next week. Jackie, thank you very much for joining us. And Greg.
Pleasure. And Alex, maybe I could say if people in the meantime, because Broker has been out for a week or 2, if people, do find it on still, it's not going to be one that will last for a very long time in the cinemas, so to get out and see it.
Good recommendation. Greg King, I want more of your dad jokes.
Because not on it over a week, Alex.
There's clearly not enough. And Peter, as the voice of reason, the recalcitrant, it's been a pleasure.
It certainly is a pleasure, and I endorse Jackie's comments about going to see Broker.
Okay, terrific. And Greg, you've seen it. You'll be able to talk about it knowledgeably next week too.
I'm up to date with all. I've got holidays now, so I'm up to date with most films.
Good on you. Folks, enjoy your week. Be kind to one another. We'll catch you next week on First on Film and Entertainment.